Today on Inside Utah Politics, the next governor and lieutenant governor of Utah, Governor-elect Spencer Cox and Lieutenant Governor-elect Deidra Henderson, are here to look back on the campaign, discuss the path forward with the pandemic, and more. Plus, we saw historic turnout on election night here in Utah. We're breaking down all the results and the impact with the Inside Utah Politics panel.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It's time to go inside Utah politics, and we begin today with Governor-elect Spencer Cox and Lieutenant Governor-elect Deidra Henderson. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Let's start off with that. Governor-elect and Lieutenant Governor-elect. How does that sound?
Well, Lieutenant Governor, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You know, I didn't go into this year expecting this, so it's going to take some getting used to for me.
Yeah, we'll dig more into that in just a bit. Governor-elect Spencer Cox, how does that title sound to you?
Well, Glenn, it sounds surreal, to be honest. It's crazy to think we're here. It's been a long year and a half, so many twists and turns, a lot of things we didn't expect, but we're just so grateful to the people of the state of Utah and the voters that supported us.
It has been a year and a half. Let's look back at the campaign. What are some of the most defining moments on the campaign trail?
Well, there are a couple that really stand out for me. One is obviously when we announced and got things started, starting the 248 city tour, which was kind of crazy in retrospect. Glad we did that. One of the biggest moments for me was choosing my lieutenant governor in that announcement, and I think that was a real defining moment for our campaign because of what came next, and because of her, I think that the next big one was really the convention.
Yeah, the convention and the primary, those were big hurdles to get through.
When you got that call, Deidra, what went through your mind? Did you have to think about it? How did that all play out?
I did have to think about it for a little while. It's an opportunity that doesn't come to you every day. And because of the work that I've done with Spencer over the years and the person that I know him to be, it wasn't a hard choice for me to make. I was up for re-election to my third term in the Utah State Senate this year, so I did have to choose. I had to make the decision whether to run for an easy re-election or to risk a potential loss and run with Spencer. But ultimately, my husband and I decided that was a risk that was well worth taking, and we're very grateful that we did. And I told Spencer, even on the primary election night, no matter what happens, I have no regrets, and I was grateful to get that call and to take that risk with Spencer.
And you credit bringing her on board for the convention and what happened in the primary?
I really do. You'll remember the pandemic was just starting. In fact, we were set to announce her as lieutenant governor, and we had an earthquake, and so we had to postpone a day, and it was just a crazy time. And I was unavailable to really run the campaign the way it needed to be run. She stepped in, took over, and we won the convention, and that really springboarded us, I believe, to a primary victory.
Did that surprise you at all? That victory in convention?
Maybe a little bit, just because I didn't know what to expect. My mind and efforts were so scattered at that point. But we knew we would be competitive, but winning, kind of going away, was, I think, exceeded my expectations in a very good way.
When you look back at the implementation of SB 54, we don't have a lot of data, but we can go back 4 years. And in races like yours, it has been unusual for the person who won convention to also win the primary. How do you think that all played out?
Well, I think it played out for several reasons. One, again, people were looking for experience, and we certainly had that. But two, and very importantly, Senator Henderson and her incredible work working directly with the delegates and helping them understand why we were the ticket that they should vote for, and that made a difference. Senator, you may have something to add to that.
Well, I mean, it threw us for a loop not to have a convention in person, not to be able to campaign in person, and that was certainly disappointing. And every candidate experienced that alteration in their plans, but we worked really hard, and it was actually really important to me to do well at convention.
Yeah, a very strange year. It all changed right in the middle of the game, no doubt about that. Tell me a little bit your thoughts on the competition. It was a hard-fought primary. In the general election, you went up against the Democratic nominees in Chris Peterson and Lieutenant Governor candidate Karina Brown. Give me your thoughts on the competition along the way.
Well, obviously, we ran against some of the best and brightest in the state. I don't think we've ever had, in the history of the state, I don't think it's hyperbole, a group of people running that had better resumes for this position or were better funded. And so we have a tremendous amount of respect for those that we ran against in the primary and in the general election. I've developed a real strong friendship with Chris Peterson. I know Senator Henderson has also developed a friendship with Karina, and they didn't pull any punches, but really proud of the way we ran our campaign.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That field in the primary was one like we haven't seen in my lifetime anyway in the state. Senator, your thoughts on the competition along the way?
Well, I had a lot of really good friends running for governor and lieutenant governor in the primary. I went to junior high and high school with Amy Winder Newton. She and I were very good friends, and of course Senator Dan McKay and Greg Hughes. And there were just so many of them. Thomas Wright. So many people that I have known and respected for many years, and so it was hard. One of the difficulties for me deciding to join Spencer was knowing that I would be going up against my good friend Amy, and I hated the thoughts of that. But at the same time, I loved the idea of an opportunity to expand my voice and to join Spencer in this endeavor.
Yeah, I kind of had a running joke that my panel participants was very limited during that primary race for governor because most of them were regulars here on the show. Okay, very important moving forward. Coronavirus, obviously the key issue that we're dealing with right now, and we're not going in the right direction in the state of Utah. So how do we get that on track?
Well, you're right. We're seeing this pandemic really, the spread of the virus explode across the United States. I think there are 36 states that have had some sort of record over the past couple weeks, including Utah, and we're seeing it in Europe as well. We had some really important meetings with Dr. Birx of the Federal Task Force this past week, and something we've been begging for is more testing, and she promised us that, and more rapid testing, so that we could start doing surveillance testing, much more testing of people, asymptomatic testing. That's how we get ahead of this. She was also very bullish on vaccines and said that as early as the end of this month, we could have a working vaccine available, obviously in limited doses, but starting the first of the year, more doses so we can protect the most vulnerable and then get that out to more Utahns. Those things are going to make a huge difference, and we've got to get those rapid tests here quickly.
Is there more we could potentially do in the meantime, though? We've all seen the videos of the huge parties going on during the Halloween weekend and more. Is asking people to follow the guidelines enough at this point?
Well, no, it's not, which is why we have mask mandates and it's why we have limits on gatherings. What we do know is that the spread isn't happening in the workplace. By and large, it's not happening in schools. It's happening in social settings, and usually those social settings are in our own homes with extended family and neighbors and those things. It's and again, we've limited that by order of the state health department, but enforcement of that is just impossible across the state. So it really is incumbent on all of us to take this more seriously, to be careful, to social distance, to wear our masks, to wash our hands, to not go out when we're sick, to improve ventilation, and to keep the spread of this virus from happening.
Senator, real quick, I want to get your thoughts on this because you have been badly impacted by the coronavirus. You've been hospitalized. Your thoughts when you see these videos of these parties and everything else that's going on?
Well, it's been a rough few months for me and for my family members. If someone gets coronavirus and they get off with a mild case, I'm really happy for them. But people need to understand that that's not how it happens with everybody. And we need to worry about more than just our deaths. We need to worry about the long-term effects, the scarring in the lungs, the scarring in the hearts that we're seeing. We don't know enough yet about this virus, but we do know that there are some serious long-term impacts to previously healthy people that aren't death. and that have an impact financially, economically, and health-wise on families and individuals. So people need to until we have widespread use of vaccines, until we have widespread use of good medical treatments, people really do need to take this seriously, make sure that they protect others, because you can be contagious, very contagious, for a couple of days before your symptoms even start, before you know you're sick.
Okay, we need to take a quick break, but I'm going to have the two of you back on when we return, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We continue now with Governor-elect Spencer Cox and Lieutenant Governor-elect Deidra Henderson. I want to get into election night. Early Wednesday, we heard the president come out, claim victory, referred to it as a fraud on the American people, saying if it changes, the election will be stolen. As someone who is now the chief of elections in Utah and soon will be, what's your thoughts when you hear those words?
Well, we've been very outspoken about this over the past several weeks. This is how elections work. We know that here in Utah. In our primary race, we didn't know who had won for 6 days. This is not uncommon. There's no evidence of massive fraud or any wrongdoing. And so it's just important for the people of the state of Utah and the people of the country to be patient, to know that this is the vote counting process and that all legitimate votes will be counted, and then we'll see what happens.
Are we concerned, Senator, about what could happen, though? I've never seen businesses boarding up their windows on election eve and beyond, anticipating maybe something could happen.
Well, I think that's a concern for all of us, and it's one reason why I think that the message that Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox and our competitor Chris Peterson, put out this message a couple of weeks ago, that we need to unite as a nation. That no matter what the outcome of the election is, we need to unite and move forward as Americans. And that is a really, really important message. And I think, we all need to be patient. We need to think the best of people and not automatically jump to conclusions that people are trying to swindle us or steal the election. I think that impugning other people's motivations is a really big problem right now, and we all need to be better about that.
Let's talk more about that campaign that you launched with your competitor, Chris Peterson. A lot of people saw that as a breath of fresh air, not politics as usual. But how can we now ride that momentum and really turn it into action and bring people together?
Well, really, it's incumbent on each of us. We can't wait for politicians to do this kind of thing. They're just a reflection of us. If we really want to change, and I pray that we do, it starts on Facebook. It starts with us not demonizing people who are different than us. It starts with us getting proximate to people who are different than us, learning about them, listening to them, trying to understand them, and then trying to convince them to join us, not just putting them down and impugning their character.
Yeah, that is a tall task, though, when you take on social media. People are willing to say anything behind a keyboard that they would never say to your face. Thoughts on that, Senator?
One thing that I've learned is we can't worry about other people. We actually need to worry about ourselves. We need to make sure that our motivations are good and that we are being graceful to other people, that we're extending mercy and grace that we would hope other people would extend to us. We can't worry about if someone will do that to us. We can only, worry about whether or not we're going to do that to someone else.
Glenn, I have to tell you that she taught me a valuable lesson. Senator Henderson always says, if it feels good, don't send it. And I'm trying to do better at that.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I like that. All right. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come, Utah voters turned out in record number. We're breaking down the key races from election night right after the break. Stay with us.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to dig into the election even more with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Representative Brian King and State Auditor John Dougal. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Good to be
Thanks,
here.
Glenn.
All right, let's start with the 4th District. As of recording, this one was getting really tight. McAdams holding on to about a 1% lead. As we're coming down the stretch over the next few weeks, Brian, what are you looking for? What are the most important key factors here?
Well, I think it depends on where the votes are coming from. You know, if you have the votes coming in from Utah County as opposed to Salt Lake County, that's obviously going to favor Burgess Owens. But if the votes are coming from Salt Lake County, I think that Ben McAdams is going to be in pretty good shape. The last edition of votes we saw right immediately before taping, that gap narrowed quite a bit. So you wonder if that didn't come from Utah County. But most of the votes in CD4 are Salt Lake County votes. I think that Ben McAdams will hopefully eke it out.
John, what are you looking for? What is going to be the key here as we certify the results?
Brian's absolutely correct. It's Utah County versus Salt Lake County, but Salt Lake County had a great night last night. And so right now, while Burgess is closing the gap, you know, I think the numbers are looking in favor of Ben, but as always, it looks like it's going to be a very close race.
Yeah, as of time of recording, there were still some 200,000 ballots in Salt Lake County. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's go to the State House. Brian, you have to feel good about potentially flipping some seats, 3 of them in particular, where the Republican incumbent is down.
Yeah, and there's some longtime incumbents too. Jim Dunnigan in HD 38, who has been in the legislature for many years. Eric Hutchings in HD 39, also been in the legislature for many years in the House, and then Steve Ellison out in 45. Had great candidates in every one of those 3 races, and they ran hard races, worked very hard, and they're up right now, and I think they're up by enough that it's much more likely than not that when the final count comes in, we're going to have those things flip and stay flipped. So we're happy about that. We wish we'd picked up some more seats, obviously. We wish we'd done better up in Weber County and some at Wasatch County, but we'll take what we can get under these circumstances.
And John, as a Republican, what do you make of Democrats chipping away and flipping seats in Salt Lake County?
Well, I think the Republicans did great around the state and held or picked up, if you will, some seats around there. But Salt Lake County was difficult. As I look at the numbers, the Democrats did about 5% better than they did last presidential election. And unfortunately in Salt Lake County, President Trump was not an asset. While he's an asset, especially in places like Washington County, in Salt Lake County it was difficult for the Republicans, and the Democrats had a great showing last night.
Brian, this is 2 straight strong showings when you go back to 2018 for Democrats in Salt Lake County. It has not been good for Republicans.
Yeah. And I think it's also true that you see certain portions of Salt Lake County turning more purple and more blue. The east side of Salt Lake County, I think, is becoming more and more solidly blue, or at the very least purple. You're seeing blue and purple tendencies move south along the west side as well. So, you know, we'll see. These things move in trends, and who knows how long this will last, but we like to think as Democrats that we reflect Utah values and priorities. We're working hard to represent well people in the state of Utah, and it's resonating in Salt Lake County in a way that we're happy with.
It is
well,
interesting.
And I think, Brian, to be honest, you guys are representing, if you will, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County values. And that's why you suffer around the state.
It is interesting to note, though, that back in 2018, we took a look at the strong Democratic turnout, and we thought, well, those ballot initiatives were driving it. We didn't have those this time, and in Salt Lake County, it appears like we saw another strong Democratic turnout. John.
Yeah, there was a strong Democratic turnout, and like I said, Trump was the referendum, and he did not have coattails to pull folks along in Salt Lake County, like Joe Biden. Joe Biden had long coattails in Salt Lake County, and they did well.
Brian, what about what John just said, where you're making grounds here in Salt Lake County, but not the rest of the state?
Well, I think we are making progress in the rest of the state. I think that what we have to do as Democrats, obviously though, is we have to we have to provide a concrete good reason for people in other parts of the state to believe that Democrats represent their values and their priorities. And we will work on doing that. I think that until and unless we do that, you're not going to see huge pickups. I mean, there's only so much ground you can gain in the Utah State Legislature representing Salt Lake County. It's about 40% of the population of the state. You have to, if you're going to be a successful minority party moving toward majority, you have to figure out a way to successfully reach people outside Salt Lake County.
We also saw Democratic incumbents do very well in potentially swing districts. One would be in House District 32, where Representative Suzanne Harrison has a big lead. Senate District 8, same thing for Senator Rebbe. What do you make of those two situations? It was just a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, that Harrison lost by a handful of votes to then incumbent LeVar Christensen. And then, of course, 2018 was a close one as well.
Right. Back in 2016, when Suzanne Harrison lost by 3 votes, I was working closely with her to try and get her elected, and I had a good friend who was a very hardcore party partisan say to me, Brian, have you told Suzanne there's no way she's going to win? You better tell her that she's going to lose, and badly, because the party registration differential in that district is just too great. I said, listen, Suzanne may lose, but she's running a great race, and she's an example of the kind of candidate that I think Democrats need to field in these areas of the state that right now have problems electing Democrats. She's smart, she's charismatic, she works hard to connect to the values of the people in her district, and she represents them very well because she is listening and she cares about what they have to say. She responds to their needs. So if Democrats do that, if Republicans do that, they're going to win. It really doesn't matter so much what party label is. What matters most is how hard you work and how clearly you demonstrate you're going to represent your district well.
John, your thoughts on those two specific races?
Well, this is where you have Dr. Zender, former state senator, who's a fantastic candidate. But, you know, Senator Rebbe is also a great candidate out there from the Democratic perspective. And so they went head to head, and Senator Rebbe came out on top this time. And you look down, you know, it was a tight race back in the day between LeVar Christensen and Suzanne Harrison. But Suzanne is a very capable state representative, a very strong candidate, and it makes it hard, especially on a night where the Democrats were so strong in Salt Lake County. You place them in other places and you get a very different outcome.
Yeah, that Senate District 8 is an interesting one because, as you pointed out, Senator Zender was picked to replace Senator Shiwazawa, who went out to take a post with HHS. So the Salt Lake County GOP picked him for the time up until the 2018 election. That's when Senator Rebbe came in, and then they had to run again in 2020. So that was kind of an unusual one there. Okay, we have a few minutes left. Let's get into the national trends. Really not the big wave one way or another that we were expecting, or two waves kind of canceling each other out. Brian, your thoughts on what we saw across the country?
Right. Well, I thought it was fascinating. And I do think that there was a lot of disappointed Democrats across the country. I was disappointed that we didn't have more of a wave, a blue wave, both in Utah and across the country. But I think what you had is two very highly energized groups of people. The Republicans were highly energized by President Trump and by the issues surrounding things like law and order and concerns about civil unrest and about concerns about the economy. You had, on the other hand, Democrats who were energized by the personality and the character of Donald Trump. And then you had also concerns about COVID and public health and public safety and that connection. So you had I think what you ended up characterizing it as, Glenn, as two big waves is accurate, that basically they kind of canceled each other out. You have to recognize there were waves, though, because we had record number of turnout and voters across the country, including in Utah.
John, what do you make of that?
Yeah, we absolutely had record turnout. We had folks that were strong for President Trump. We had folks that were strong for former Vice President Joe Biden. I think those two waves collided. Clearly, Biden had a good night, not as well as I think he hoped. Trump exceeded expectations for a lot of folks. I mean, polling had him struggling across the nation, and he's, you know, we still have kind of neck and neck race right now waiting for various states to be called.
Let's talk about that polling, because this will be two general elections in a row where it's been way off. Do we need to start having an honest conversation about polling and its impact in elections, Brian?
You know, I think that that's going to be something that we hear a lot about in coming months and years even, because the polling was way off for the second general election, presidential election in a row. It's hard to know. I mean, are we having a problem contacting the people who are eventually coming out and voting? Are we not asking the right questions? Are we having people who are knowingly misleading the pollsters in terms of not giving honest responses? Or just having people who change their mind? I don't think the latter is likely. I don't really think that people are any more likely or willing or inclined to mislead than they have been. I just don't know that we're reaching the right people, the people who end up coming out and voting.
Okay.
And I
think pollsters...
I have 30 seconds left. We saw one poll that had Biden up like 17 points in Wisconsin. That was neck and neck. clear problem there.
Oh, there's clearly a problem. I mean, it's hard to reach folks. Folks, you know, they get called, hey, do you want to answer 45 questions? It's like nobody wants to take 45 questions on a phone call. And some folks are embarrassed to say who they're backing, whether it's on one side or the other.
All right,
and so
gentlemen.
polling is problematic.
Great conversation. Unfortunately, we have to end it there. Appreciate you being with us. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. Election results will be finalized on Tuesday, November 17th. That's when Board of Canvassers meetings will be taking place. The general legislative session is coming up. Opening day is Tuesday, January 19th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com, or you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and interact there as well. Just log on and search Glenn Mills ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.